We now begin with the first morning session panel on this day 2, Atlas on Rollerskates, ISD's shifting role during COVID-19. Today's session will be with Becky Lott, Partnerships and Wellness Director, and Manor Schoolhouse Foundation Director of Manor ISD. Ryan Single, Dietitian at Austin ISD. Judith Canales, Southside First Economic Development Council. Betty Wiggins from Houston ISD. And moderator Kim Olson, former director at Dallas ISD and 2018 candidate for Texas Agriculture Commissioner. The panel will discuss in this session the massive pivot for ISDs under COVID-19, the effects on staff, budget, and the innovative ways ISDs have been forced to reach known and new students and their families and communities. They will also discuss the long-term effects of working food service divisions going into 2021 and beyond.
Yeah,
can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Three's a charm. We're finally live today, and I probably have the most exciting panel for you to listen to today. I have incredible folks who are going to talk from a strategic level all the way down to feeding children. And my name is Kim Olson, retired colonel from the Air Force, and I am a farmer. And I have met many of these folks on the panel today, and I'm just so excited for you to hear what they have to say. I am going to start with my very good friend Judy, who I've met way out in West Texas when I ran for Ag Commissioner. And she is going to talk about something that is near and dear to all our hearts, especially with the new change of our administration. She had a great stint at the USDA, and it gives her an incredible perspective about how policy is made. And one of the panelists with us today made a comment, which was what I'll lead with you, Judy, is that sometimes those that sit at the table to make policy have never had to serve a meal to kids in school. So with that, I'd like you to speak to your lessons at the USDA and where we can go forward. Judy?
Thank you so much, Kim Olson. And as always, you are a wonderful, respected leader here in our great state of Texas. And I'm so proud to be a part of this type of a conference, number one. And I commend also Joy and her group of the overall effort, because this really is monumental. My name is Judy Canales, and I actually am currently working in San Antonio, Texas, as the executive director of the Southside First Economic Development Council. And so I was so pleased to be asked to be a part of this effort because of the fact that, Kim is correct, I have served as a presidential appointee for two presidential administrations for Bill Clinton in the late 90s. And in that role, I was the Deputy State Director for the United States Department of Agriculture Rural Development here for Texas. And I am a native Texan, born and raised in Uvalde. And during the Obama administration, I served in Washington, D.C. as Rural Business Administrator at the Department of Agriculture, and then as the State Executive Director for the U.S. Department of Agriculture Farm Service Agency. So I've had both Washington and Texas experience. But I've been also boots on the ground, and which is the work that I'm doing now currently. So which brings us to, here we are in this now finishing 1 year and moving into, unfortunately, a continued effort regarding the COVID-19 pandemic and what that has, what pressures have come upon our communities. And of course, under this particular effort that we're talking about today with school districts. And so I think about the headline that I've seen just this week as we're talking about school districts and our children and serving our state. Here in Texas, we have 29 million residents. And the United States Census Bureau announced this week that 16.5% of our state's 29 million residents do not always have enough food to eat in the last 7 days, in the last week. Folks, this calculates to 4.785 million Texans. So, I mean, that right there is, to me, is profound. And so I think about the families, I think about the mothers, the parents, the fathers who are all having to either figure out food for their children, figure out where the food is going to come from for their perhaps their own elderly parents, in the sense that they may too be in that middle ground, as if there's more and more of us who are in those family responsibilities. And so I think about what a charge that this is for now the new Biden administration. And what I wanted to bring to your attention is that President Biden has now put forward a call to action on hunger. And so this is in alignment with what is occurring based on all of the pressures that our communities are going through because of food insecurity. Texas is a food secure state, and so is our entire nation. And I caught the tail end of Mr. Hill speaking from the previous panel with joy, and I was so glad to hear, because I want to first of all talk a little bit more about President Biden's plan, and then I want to also speak about what we can do in community. And I know that there's colleagues here on this panel who are right there in school districts who can speak very closely to that day-to-day effort. So here is the recognition of President Biden and the fact that we need to have more money for low-income families and, of course, children who are missing meals due to school closures. And so the proposal being the increase of what is called the pandemic EBT, which is the whole effort to be able to have the electronic benefits transfer, which was something that I saw really become more necessary when I was serving for Barack Obama. During that time, was you had the farmers markets, efforts that were beyond the grocery store. Although grocery stores, the whole infrastructure of food delivery has been pressured and needs to continue to be updated. But the delivery of food, and now, of course, as people are having to think about not going to the grocery store, or they're coming up with ways, which is being curbside delivery and such, that are again added pressures. Because what does curbside mean? You need a vehicle. You need a vehicle. And so that is, we've got to rethink how we are working with this food delivery. But what I am glad to see is the fact that under President Biden, that there is more of a recognition. I also want to point out that in the United States, more than 1 in 5 Black and Latino adults and children report food insecurity. So again, this, for those of you who are in the school districts, this is not new, but it is now being recognized because of this call to action, something that I'm going to keep repeating over and over. Another aspect that we're seeing that needs to be also redone and reevaluated, and we use the word recalibrated. It is the SNAP programs, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Programs, also within the Department of Agriculture. As a former federal official within USDA, a lot of folks and in our country do not recognize or know that between 60, 70, 75% of the USDA budget, which is hundreds of billions of dollars, is actually the food programs. Most people don't know, which brings us all in. This brings us all in community, because that means it's all up to us to recognize the fact that we all need to eat. And that's something that I would bring it forward whenever I was working with rural development or with farmers. People would say, well, why do I need to care about farmers? Well, do you like to eat? And so so here we are in this delivery now of food and figuring out the infrastructure that needs to be improved. It needs to be changed, and it needs to be brought into this current pandemic environment and moving forward. Additionally, what I wanted to speak to you about is that the cost of food, and President Biden is now directing the United States Department of Agriculture to look in what is called the Thrifty Food Plan. What are we speaking about here? The cost of food to that consumer. It had not been reevaluated since 2006. So what does it mean for that consumer? Bringing this, again, practical information to the department, and also being able to communicate this forward as for many of you all, you may not know, the Food and Nutrition Service, for example, for Texas is based in Dallas. That's a regional office. I've been a part of being at the state offices, and so that is where we bring this information to our state. So I'm getting the note from Kim, and what I wanted to state to you guys on a personal note, my husband I am born and raised in Uvalde. My husband and I have our home in Eagle Pass. I'm working in San Antonio. You're thinking, what? This Highway 90 up and down in South Texas, of which I'm a native of. And I am so pleased. My husband, being a teacher and a coach in Eagle Pass, was a part of the effort that their head coach, Eric Villaseñor in Eagle Pass, pulled the coaches together and made food distribution part of a community effort. And that's something that I offer here to the school districts, which is to humanize and to make it so that it is a community action and something that we are all a part of. What I loved about that is that it brought in people who are not usually involved with food banks, who are not usually involved in this distribution, to be able to carry that out. And it's a great image and message for all. Let's remember, food, call to action, the United States of America and our great state of Texas. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. That was fantastic as always. You just hit it on the mark. And you segued beautifully into our incredible next speaker, Becky Lott, who works up there at Manor. And she is going to discuss about, lead off with her foundation that had to pivot and do something it hadn't really been set up originally to do, and how she was able to maneuver it as we entered into the COVID world. And what a challenge for ISDs these days, trying to feed children. And to your point, Judy, Title I money goes mostly in the Farm Bill to feeding our families across this nation. So I'd like to hand it over to Becky Lott, who's sitting down there at Manor. And thank you, Becky, for coming on board.
Absolutely. Thank you. And, Kim, I appreciate and value everything you do, but how am I supposed to follow Judy?
Yeah,
right?
No.
Judy, I really look forward to meeting you in person and learning more about the work that you're doing. And thank you for being a champion here in Texas. I greatly appreciate it. And we'll be calling you very soon. So I'm Becky Lott. I am the Director of Partnerships and Wellness in the Manor Independent School with the Manor Independent School District. And beyond that, in the last 2.5 years, I was asked to lead the Manor Schoolhouse Foundation, which the primary focus of the foundation is to raise funds for innovative grants and programs. But as Kim mentioned, we had to shift our focus. We felt a call to action to respond to the COVID pandemic. Therefore, our 28 board members on our foundation, all of whom represent our district, we have some community members, we have Samsung, Austin Semiconductor, other big corporations, and we said it's our time to talk about this. What can we do? So back in March, we developed a COVID-19 relief effort. And we realized that COVID-19 hurts us all, but especially on the most vulnerable. So we, in response to these hardships, the foundation directed the support to raise dollars to support families suffering through these hardships. Fortunately, we were able to raise over about $120,000. Those dollars are being used.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, so those dollars are being used still today. We're close to running out, sadly, and we're continuing our efforts to raise more money. But so when we talk about food insecurities and food challenges, boy, it's real in Manor. Manor's located 10 miles east of Austin, but we have rural areas. We have a lot of families without transportation, as Judy mentioned, which is a huge barrier. So we've utilized our social workers, our counselors, and our parent liaisons all throughout the districts to help distribute food, gift cards, basic needs items. Yesterday, we had a big distribution event at one of our campuses, and we had lines and lines of cars of families just to try to pick up the food and other items. It was so, with the pandemic stretching as long as it has, our numbers are higher every day. So we created what's called a COVID-19 hotline for families to call to share their stories and tell us about their needs. And this has allowed us to track the general needs and report that back to the superintendent. Beyond that, though, in saying all this, is that we have partnered with Sherry Fleming with the county, with Travis County Health and Human Services, who has provided funding for us to for them to distribute, to deliver caregiver meals daily, Monday through Friday, to 5 of our campuses. It's still a barrier for our families oftentimes to pick up some of the food, but we are coordinating this through our food services director, and our food services staff help deliver that or distribute that during the same time of the free lunch and breakfast delivery. We face some challenges with that, and we have to pivot occasionally in wonderful joy. With Cooknick, founder and CEO, she's working with us, and we're in ongoing communication about, is it working? Are we at the right locations? How can we distribute more food? But without those partnerships, this wouldn't be possible. It is critical for us to all come together during this time. And then we also have the Capital Area Food Bank, and they come out to our district twice a month and distribute food at one of our high schools on a location at Manor Senior High twice a month. But in saying all this, it's my work has not always been in the focus of food, but I feel like it is now. I oversee health services as well. So our district as a collective group has come together with many of our community partners to try to champion this important cause and need. We don't have a perfect outline for it, but we always want to hear about what other districts are doing, share ideas, and identify ways that we can improve the services, and also learn about other resources that are out there. So our foundation is also considering looking into other grant opportunities as a collective group of what we can do. But once again, as the foundation was primary mission has been to provide those resources within the classrooms. But without the food, we wouldn't be able to learn and come to school. So that's a brief overview on our foundation work. Kim.
Well, thank you for that. And just for perspective, can you talk real quick about how large Manor ISD is and how many meals just give the audience a perspective, because it's going to segue beautifully into Austin and then the Houston ISD, so we can kind of build our way up.
Absolutely. I'm sorry I didn't share that in the beginning.
No worries.
We have over 9,300 students, but as you know, Manor is growing a lot. If you've driven out to Austin and realize the growth, there's property and land in Manor, and it's being developed quickly. So what we're seeing is that we, within the next 5 years, that we'll probably increase by another 5,000 students.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, appreciate you. And as you can see, school districts are, almost flexible, and there almost has to be like Gumby. So very well done, Becky. And now that again segues me beautifully into Ryan, who works with the Austin ISD. And I loved it when we and I chatted earlier. It was like, I'm busy feeding Austin families. And so Ryan, I'd like you to take it away and tell the audience about what's happening right there in our great capital here in Texas.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it, Kim, and I appreciate everybody else. It's an honor to be on this panel with all of you. So I'm the dietitian for Austin Independent School District. So since COVID hit Austin, we've been working diligently to do whatever that we can to make sure that our students still have access to the meals that they need to be successful in and out of the classroom. So we, at the moment, are still feeding kids that are choosing to learn in the classroom. And then we are also feeding our students that are learning virtually. So we do that in a number of ways. One is we do curbside feeding. We have 48 sites for curbside feeding. And that at those sites, we serve meals once a week. Today is actually our feeding site. So our staff right now is working very hard to serve meals to our families that are coming to these curbside sites. We have 48 of them. We do bulk meals. We provide 7-day meal packs of breakfast and lunch, so they only have to come once per week. So that helps a little bit. At the beginning, we did every day, just like Maynard was doing, but we found that it was difficult for a lot of our families to make it to these sites every single day, particularly once school started, because they only get so much of a time for lunch. So parents are at home working hard to be there, teachers and parents at the same time. So that 1-day meal service is very beneficial to our families. So they pick up breakfast and lunch, and then the sites that qualify also are getting supper and snacks. So some of the sites are offering up to 28 meals when they come to pick those up. So it's been very beneficial for those families. Like Judy said, we do have some families that don't have access to transportation to be able to come up to these sites, but we also do home delivery to some of our families as well, particularly for the families that are in most need and don't have access to transportation and have a more difficult time to show up to these curbside sites on Thursday to pick up meals. So we will be delivering those meal packs to them on Wednesdays as well. So those are a couple of the ways we're helping our families. We have done holiday packs as well. So during Thanksgiving and Christmas, we did 2 servings, and this is a partnership with the Great Central Texas Food Bank, where when they had their holiday food distribution sites, we partnered with them. We handed out boxes of food as well for their children. And so during that time, we served in those 3 instances, over 140,000 meals to our families. We've served millions of meals at our curbside sites as well. So we're providing lots and lots of food to our families to make sure that food security issues are less than they would be otherwise. In addition to that, we did a project funded by the Michael Susan Dell Foundation, who's been a great partner for us over the years, to serve produce boxes to our families. And so this is a partnership with Common Market and lots of farms across Texas, where they were packing mostly organic Texas-raised vegetables and fruits for our families. 10 to 15 pound packages served at our curbside sites as well. And we did that for between June and December until the funding ran out for that, unfortunately. But we served over 9,000 produce boxes during that time. And so about over 100,000 pounds worth of organic Texas-grown produce given to our families. So that was great. It helped out, obviously, our farmers, but also our families and lower their food security issues as well. So that was a really great partnership that we had there. In addition to that, we have gotten some funding through the city of Austin to provide caregiver meals. And so these have been since mid-May, we started this project and got funding for this project. So this is a really great project that is beneficial not only to our families, but to restaurants in Austin as well, because this food is not being prepared by our staff, it's being prepared by restaurants all over Austin. So we have a bunch of different restaurants in Austin, some of the best restaurants in the city, and some of the best chefs in the city are making food for our families. And so at this point, we have served over 1 million meals to our families, caregiver meals. So they get, as well as our families, for our children are getting, for our students are getting 7-day meal packs. Our families are also getting meal packs for breakfast and lunch as well for caregivers. So that's been a really great partnership. I know, times are very tough for restaurants in Austin right now, as you can imagine. So this was a partnership that has allowed some of these restaurants to actually stay in business and keep people employed during this time when they otherwise wouldn't have. I know a few of the restaurants wouldn't have stayed in business if it wasn't for this project. So it's been a really great partnership through the city of Austin and with these restaurants as well. So some of those restaurants are Locadoro, Easy Tiger, Henbit, Howland's Kitchen, Contigo, Hillside Pharmacy, and Rosedale Kitchen. And all of them have really benefited from this program in addition to our families getting food made by some of the best chefs in the city. It's pretty awesome as well too. And so it's good to point out, we're feeding our families and we're still doing the things that we normally do. We're a very progressive district when it comes to food. So we like to support our local Texas economy and our local Austin economy. So we're still purchasing as much local produce and as much local ingredients that we can to make sure we're supporting our local economy. So a lot of the food that we're serving our students, from our bread, our tortillas, to a lot of our fruits and vegetables, are locally grown and locally made products as well. So we're still continuing to do that even during this time. And I can't begin to give enough of a shout out to our staff who has been working diligently since this all started and doing whatever they can do every single day to make sure that our students are still fed and get the food that they need to be successful.
Thank you, Ryan. And I just love that fact that it's almost like a closed food system, that none of the food is being wasted, from the growers to the restaurants to the preparers to families' tummies. I mean, what a great example of how to take an untenable situation of COVID and isolation and yet leverage it so we support the economies of many areas within the food system that we have. Well, speaking of a food system, the next guest is one of my most favorite women. If you like Molly Ives, you'll love Betty Wiggins. She is the head of the Houston ISD school system. She's the one who said sometimes those that make policy have never had to serve a meal to anybody. And she is going to talk about the 9th largest school system in the nation, the largest in our state of Texas, and how she has been able to feed families. And I just, my hat is off to you. And the best thing is we took her out of Detroit, brought her, and we've made her an honorary Texan down here. So, and we are lucky to have this woman down here feeding our Texas families. Betty, I'm so glad you're here. The floor is yours, my friend.
I hope you all can hear me because I had a difficult time. What I like to say is thank you. And to save time in terms so I can get to Houston, if you think what my colleagues have just said, I'm doing that too. I'm doing everything that they're doing so I can save some time. Wonderful description about curbsides. We have curbsides, but the twist to our curbsides is that we also feed families. The twist to whatever Houston is doing is that we feed families. When the pandemic occurred, we started feeding families, because my whole belief, and that comes from years of work, is that you can't feed kids unless you feed families. So I always ask people to open up that imaginary door and look inside that household where that poor kid comes from. Remember, he didn't make himself poor. His environment or his family or where he came from made him poor. So I told my superintendent, I said, this is not going to be effective just feeding kids. We got to feed families. So I automatically got into a relationship with the food bank. And we did, and since March the 14th, we have been working 6 days a week because most of our food distribution, after we serve the kids brick and mortar and curbside and snack and fresh fruit and vegetables and all the things that we normally do, we start serving neighborhoods. Just last night, we did 5,000 cars, families, at Barnett Stadium, which is one of our stadiums. Usually, and then on Saturdays, we have 5 neighborhood sites, and a couple of them are at schools. One of the things that we do is that no one reached out to the food deserts. So that's one of the things that we do. At Barnett, one of the reasons we located it at Barnett, which is a stadium south going towards Galveston. If you know geography, I hope I'm helping you out because that's the best I can do. We had a walk up where 300 families walked up with baby strollers and laundry bags on wheels and all the kids in the family. And we serve families. So we had, and last night we didn't have food to serve. We had hygiene boxes. And that's when we found out that people also need hygiene boxes. They need that kind of care. And I think we should look at it. What we should ask the government is like, this is a FEMA situation. This is a disaster. And we should treat this as like we're treating disaster feeding, because people are coming to get in line because they have no food. And when they have a disaster, we see all kind of stuff. We see hygiene boxes and everything, because I also had that. I got that. There was a tornado, not tornado, that's Michigan. Hurricane. You know, not tornado. Michigan, I do apologize. It was a hurricane that was supposed to hit us. It didn't hit us. It hit Lake Charles. So, but we had trucks coming to us, and I got Procter & Gamble products on some disaster trucks. So I was able to give people towels and washing powder and all kind of stuff that was beneficial to them. As one lady has said, we need this stuff. The food is great, but the hygiene kits help. So we learned to start saying, okay, what can we do to support our families? But because when we support our families, they come and pick up my kids' meals. We are doing apartment buildings where no one else will go into an apartment building. My catering staff, who's not doing any catering anymore, have turned into real nice school lunch ladies. So they take our catering truck, go into the apartment, set up their table, and do 7 meals. People come down. You know, in some areas it's kind of dicey. We do have to send some police with us, but we go into those dicey areas, and we're finding out a lot about those children because most of them are virtual learners, and they're not coming to school. So when they see the truck, they come down to get something to eat. So our catering department is doing 25 apartment buildings a week, 5 a day. That's all they can do. And we could do more, but our limitation of resources is public safety. We don't have enough police to go into these areas, and we're going into some real wicked areas. But those kids need to be fed. So we go. We just started another program of delivering to our fragile special ed kids. Yeah. So now I'm getting into a relationship with the transportation, and that is not a program where we're delivering 7 days a week. We're working on that because guess what, guys? We're delivering hot food. We're delivering tube feedings. We're delivering all kind of stuff that our medically fragile kids need that they were getting while they were in school. And the parents no longer, and the parents don't have any money. I need to talk to USDA because I think when we deliver that medically fragile, and the dietitian, Ryan, you probably agree with me, some of that stuff, you need a doctor's order. So we should be, I feel like Medicaid should reimburse us, Kim.
Working on it.
No, and if there's USDA up there, I think, when a doctor writes an order, we should be reimbursed for that. I'm not talking about when we change the texture or we ground the food or whatever, but when we have to actually go out and buy a product that a doctor has written us prescription for. So that's one of the biggest. And we're talking now with special ed about that. But in the meantime, I'm going to still feed those kids. But the whole thing about what we do and our whole approach is we feed families in order to feed kids. So, and I don't want to, I don't want everybody to get all ooh about our numbers. Our numbers are about the same as Maynard's numbers would be in relationship. Mm-hmm. So I do 200,000 pounds of food a week. That's because I'm big, but it's the same process. It's the same effort. It's the same. As Rebecca, it's the same. Babe, we're the same. Ryan, we're the same. But everybody just oohs and ahs about 200,000 pounds. And, I do, 5,000 cars. That's a relationship to what I'm doing. But I'm my budget and the number of staff I have to use. But we work 6 days a week. That's the thing I want people to know. Most of the work that we do is after the bell rings. Mm-hmm. Most of the work we do and then we had to change delivery. I bet you guys didn't tell your delivery. We had to change to 2 to 5. We had to change 2 to 6 to make it available to the parents. So that's the story in Houston. It's the same as Austin. It's the same as Maynard. It's just that our approach was to feed families in order to feed kids.
Thank you, Betty. And as you can see, boy, you want Betty in your court when you're talking about feeding families and feeding kids. Thank you so much. We have a couple questions from the audience. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of consolidate because they're all pretty much the same. And each of you sort of touched on it about, it's the grant du jour. Okay, we're going to get a grant and it's going to fill this need. And so the question from the audience is, are the things we're doing sustainable? And again, I'm going to go back to what our value system is as a nation. If you don't fund it, it's not of value. If you don't have a policy around it and then put money behind it that makes it sustainable, it really isn't a value. So if we want to tackle hunger in this nation, it has to have funds behind it. And many of the grants, I'm assuming, and I'd like both Becky and Ryan to address this real quick, is Ryan, when you did the ag work of the excess product, was that a grant from the Texas Department of Ag, and did it run out? And then same thing with you, Becky, you have a foundation. Is the work you're doing sustainable? And Betty, then you can finish up. So Ryan, I'll start with you. That was the first question.
Sure. It was not from the USDA. Our funding was from through the Michael Susan Dell Foundation, who's been a partner with us in a variety of projects. So it's not sustainable. They don't have any additional funding for that. So we have stopped since. We stopped in at the end of December for being able to do that. So our funding ran out on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That answers that. Becky, what about you with your foundation? Again, sustainability is key because when you don't have money, then you gotta cut out certain things. So please.
Absolutely. As I mentioned before, the mission of the foundation was not to shift its focus this way. So it's an ongoing discussion that we're having to determine where we can fill some of those voids. But as a person over partnerships for the district, our city, and I mentioned our partners who are providing services now, is that we're working to bring everybody to the table to determine what we can do to sustain it. We're just a part of that piece, but we're not going to say that's it and that's final. The needs of the Maynard community are great. And so we realize that, and our superintendent realizes that. So in terms of sustainability, we're looking for other opportunities, and the foundation and the district come together to form those decisions. So right now, I don't have a total answer for you in terms of what that's going to look like for next year, but it's an ongoing commitment from the district to identify ways to support our students.
And can I interject, those of you that don't know, Judy, correct me on this, when they passed the Farm Bill, it's a 10-year bill, is that right, or 5? Remind me on that.
It's less than that. It's 4 and 5. It's 5. And so the last one was the 2018. And when I worked on one, it was the 2014. So it's about a 5-year time frame.
We're working on a continuing.
I guess my question would be from policy.
Well, Betty,
Yeah, Rihanna.
what she's talking about is authorizing, which is the Farm Bill, and right now the annual, which is year to year to year, is our budget, which is appropriations and our budget for the United States. And yes, ma'am, we've been on continuing resolutions and so forth. That would be our budget part.
With no money.
And that's why I spoke earlier. I hear you, and that's why I spoke earlier about, with the new administration and the priorities of President Biden to prompt Congress, to work with Congress, work with, of course, for the executive branch, for the Department of Agriculture, who works with the TDA, and TDA works with you guys. I mean, that's kind of the some of the sequence.
Well, I might say something that's very unpopular now, but they just gave that pandemic EBT. That is, to me, is just throwing money and not solving the problem. One of the things that we really needed, that pandemic EBT, you're putting that money out there, you're giving it to poor people, and they're going to the same sources to buy the unhealthy food. Instead of recognizing that the real partner that you have in solving hunger is the school lunch program. Did you listen to what we were saying? We were on the front lines. We continue to be on the front line. You know why? Because we know how to feed masses of people. We feed people. There is nothing degrading about having a school lunch program, a universally free school lunch program, because I'm telling you, it's finally hitting the kids in the end of the cul-de-sac. That we need to make sure that we partner, that pandemic money, you could have put that money into school lunch, and we would have served more kids. If the bottom line is to address hunger, we address hunger. That's the reason. Remember why that program was started, and they're not putting any funding in it. So when they put the pandemic I said, well, why didn't they put it in school lunch? One of the things we need the guys to do in USDA is look at these regs. I need to have a waiver to have the summer feeding program for at least a year until we can, because I can reach more kids. Because everybody, just because you open the school and you get the vaccine, these problems are not going to go away. So, Judy, when you go to Washington, tell them we need the waiver. We need the waiver, and I hope my colleagues agree. We need that waiver for at least another year if you really want to address hunger. Because every kid is not coming back to school. If you want to address hunger, we need that waiver. You need, if you want to subsidize SNAP, okay, but your partner, the person that's on the front line, and then we also need to look at the regulations and saying about that salt. It's a therapeutic level. Isn't that right, Ryan? That salt requirement they have is a therapeutic level. Judy, we run a feeding program. You should have listened to the American Dietetic Association, listened to dietitians that we have, but they're going to give them more sugar and the salt. So why can't you just, let the Institute of Medicine do what they do, take care of people in an intervention, and let us do what we do in a preventative way by serving good food. My participation went up. Do you know how much my participation? They like biscuits down here. A white power biscuit. Kids, and a garbage can did not eat, but my kids ate. So,
all right,
that's
Betty.
the question.
And don't
Is that the question?
Yeah, women and men who are passionate about feeding Americans. Well, our time has been out.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. We love it. I'd rather have that. Women passionate. You tell them, Betty. That's what Joy was saying. So again, I'd like to thank the 105 people that are watching us today. It shows you care about everything. This is so great. Becky from Maynard, thank you for leaning in and what you do every day. Ryan, thank you for your work. You're being a dietitian and making sure our kids are healthy. Judy, thank you. It's wonderful to see you. My gosh, you don't age a bit. I saw you 3 years ago in person when we were out in West Texas. And again, Betty, the woman who makes stuff happen down there in our southern portion. Thank you to Joy, my good friend, who is just my shiro these days. And again, be well, be safe, be strong. You all take care. And thanks again for what you do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you
thank
very
you, Colonel Kim Olson. Yes.
Thank you.
Hey.
Great job. You did an awesome job.
Oh, I'm sorry about the startup. It doesn't, let me just tell you, can I give you feedback right real quick? It doesn't go steady. It blinks when you're live. And you had said, wait for it to go steady. And so that's why I got confused because the, ready was steady and the live was blinking. So that was my fault.
Sorry about that. I'll be more clear with my
No worries. I'm very, chop, chop.
But yes, thank you, Kim.
All right.
All right.
See ya.